I never imagined that something as simple as a baby name could detonate my entire extended family. But the moment I told my sister-in-law Rachel that my husband Aaron and I would not be naming our son Brandon, the fuse was lit. Brandon was Rachel's ex-husband, the man she'd cheated on with his own brother, during a spectacular implosion of a marriage that had headlined local gossip 2 years earlier. She swore she still honored him and wanted someone in the family to carry on his name as penance, or to prove she still loved him, or maybe just to feel in control again. I wasn't willing to offer up my child as her living apology to her. Rachel stopped speaking to me for exactly 3 days. Then the gifts began. Monogrammed blankets with a big fancy B, a personalized onesie with Brandon stitched across the chest, even a tiny silver rattle engraved with the date of my scheduled C-section. The passive-aggressive avalanche filled our apartment until Erin boxed everything up and drove it back to her house. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong by several criminal degrees. At 26 weeks, I started progesterone injections, the same treatment that had carried my first pregnancy safely to term after an early scare. The vials lived in a small refrigerator in our guest bathroom, far from curious toddler hands. I logged every dose in a journal my obstetrician provided, double-checking lot numbers because I'm the kind of anxious person who alphabetizes her spice rack. 2 Mondays after Aaron returned Rachel's gifts, I opened a new vial and something looked off. The liquid was slightly cloudy, the rubber stopper misaligned. I told myself it was paranoia, wiped the septum with alcohol, and injected. It stung worse than usual, but I chalked it up to anxiety. The next morning I woke to a dull ache low in my belly. The same lead-heavy cramp that had sent me to the ER 4 years earlier. I injected anyway, because skipping could be worse, but the fear was louder than the pain. Aaron, ever the calmer half of us, drove me straight to Dr. Lou's office. Blood work, ultrasound, elevated inflammation markers, no immediate sign of preterm labor yet. Still, Dr. Lou replaced my supply on the spot and ordered the suspect vials tested by the hospital lab. She told me to rest and promised she'd call as soon as results came back. She called the next afternoon with a voice that belonged on television hospital dramas, the kind that telegraphs bad news before a single word drops. The progesterone solution in 2 of the vials had been diluted with saline, contaminated with bacteria, and laced with ibuprofen crushed so finely it dissolved invisible to the eye. Ingested orally, ibuprofen was a routine nuisance. Injected intramuscularly into a pregnant woman dependent on progesterone, it was a miscarriage waiting to happen. Someone had tried to sabotage my pregnancy. The room spun. Erin steadied me while Dr. Lou kept talking, her clinical words bouncing off the walls. When my hearing finally tunneled back, she was reciting a string of instructions and legal cautions about police reports and chain of custody. We hung up. I sat on the couch, hands on my stomach, and whispered to my son that I would burn the entire world down before letting anything happen to him. Aaron changed every lock in the apartment by sundown. Only 3 people had key copies before. Us, my mother, and, because family is trust, right? Rachel. We didn't accuse her out loud yet, but the truth sat between us like a loaded gun on the coffee table. My mother cried when Aaron retrieved her key, confused but compliant. Rachel, however, unleashed a text storm so rapid it looked like automated spam. "How dare you accuse me? Family means access. You can't lock me out of my nephew's life." We hadn't typed a single word to her. Detective Morales from the precinct's fraud and forgery unit showed up Thursday with a crime scene tech. They swabbed the fridge handle, dusted the vials, and collected the torn cardboard from my bathroom trash. Morales asked whether anyone had motive to harm me or the baby. I opened my mouth, then closed it, afraid to implicate family. Aaron, bless him, had no such hesitation. "Rachel Turner," he said, voice flat as a morgue tray. He explained the Brandon fixation, the gifts, the silent treatment, the key. Morales took notes. We spent the weekend like fugitives, checking every expiration label, scanning our car's undercarriage for trackers we'd only seen in movies. Monday morning, Morales called. Fingerprints on 2 tampered vials matched Rachel's DMV record. Security footage from the lobby showed her entering our building at 11:07 p.m., the night before my cramping episode, and leaving at 11:23 p.m. The elevator camera caught her wiping something off, likely gloves, into her purse. Morales had enough for an arrest warrant by lunchtime. Rachel was cuffed in her scrubs outside the dental office where she worked as a receptionist. She had been reordering business cards when police walked her out. Part of me expected instant regret. She was family, Aaron's only sibling, our future child's aunt. Instead, icy relief flooded me. I felt like I'd been holding my breath since the faulty injection and finally exhaled. My son kicked, almost approving. Rachel spent 48 hours in county lockup before her boyfriend posted bail. The moment she got out, she went full scorched earth on Facebook. Long posts about my psychological instability, claims that I poisoned myself for attention, screenshots of benign texts she twisted into threats. She even shared my ultrasound photo with a caption implying I was an unfit mother. My obstetrician filed a HIPAA complaint. We disabled our social media, notified friends, and watched the storm whirl outside our digital windows. Detective Morales recommended a civil attorney who specialized in tortious interference with medical treatment. Jason Patel was barely older than me, but had the shark energy of someone who joy scavenges statutes for loopholes. He filed a personal injury suit for emotional distress, medical battery, and attempted prenatal harm, plus punitive damages to ensure the defendant never again tampers with anything more delicate than a TV remote. The number he wrote on the complaint made my stomach flip. More than our mortgage, more than my parents' house. Pregnancy months stretch on a different axis of time, slow and fast at once. Court, though, is slower. While motions crawled, my belly ballooned. I developed a ritual. Each night I read court filings aloud to the baby, converting legalese into bedtime stories. Once upon a time, punitive damages reminded bad people that consequences are real. Aaron laughed, but it steadied me. Rachel violated the restraining order 3 times before the hearing. Once by driving past our building, once by mailing another Brandon blanket soaked in perfume, and once by accidentally showing up at my prenatal yoga class. Each incident added weight to the DA's criminal case. Morales collected everything. At 36 weeks, me a waddling planet, the criminal trial began. The prosecutor offered Rachel a plea: admit guilt to felony adulteration of a drug with intent to cause bodily harm, serve 18 months, followed by probation. She spat on the table, actual saliva, and demanded a jury. Fine. The trial lasted 5 days. The lab tech testified about the ibuprofen residue, Dr. Liu about medical risk, Morales about fingerprints and footage. Jason and I watched from the second row, my court-approved compression socks doing overtime. The defense tried to pin contamination on manufacturing error, but their expert folded under cross. admitting he'd never handled progesterone injections in practice. Rachel took the stand against counsel's advice. She claimed she'd only rearranged the vials for fun, no idea they'd break refrigeration guidelines, and suggested maybe ibuprofen dust had floated in from her purse because she always carries Advil loose for cramps. The jury took 4 hours, guilty. Sentencing scheduled postpartum to accommodate my due date, irony thick as wet cement. Our civil suit waited its turn. Meanwhile, my son arrived 7 hours before Halloween, healthy, squalling, perfect. We named him Theo, after Aaron's grandfather, and plastered the hospital door with letters 4 inches tall so no one could pretend confusion. 2 weeks later, Judge Alvarez sentenced Rachel to 5 years, suspended after 36 months if she completed counseling and paid restitution. I brought Theo to court in a carrier. Rachel looked at him once, eyes glinting not with remorse but with ownership denied. She mouthed Brandon like a curse. I adjusted Theo's blanket and stared back until deputies led her away. With the criminal verdict secure, Jason accelerated the civil discovery. We subpoenaed Rachel's phone records. Turns out she'd Googled dilute progesterone injection outcomes and how much ibuprofen causes miscarriage days before the tampering. She'd also texted her best friend screenshots of baby name polls captioned, "I'll make that B-witch pay." We deposed the friend who cried, admitted Rachel bragged about fixing the Brandon problem, and surrendered even more messages. The friend asked if cooperation would spare her from testifying. Jason said yes, if she wrote a sworn statement and never deleted another text. Rachel's homeowner's insurance balked at covering malicious acts. Her attorney, a beleaguered man who looked like his tie had been borrowed from a lost and found box, begged mediation. Jason agreed, but he brought an expert economist who calculated future therapy costs for both me and Theo, plus lost wages from Aaron's unpaid leave during the investigation. The total eclipsed the policy limits by 6 figures. Rachel refused the offer, screaming that she'd declare bankruptcy first. Jason smiled politely and reminded her that bankruptcy courts don't discharge willful and malicious injuries. While the lawsuit lumbered through courts, I found sanity in late-night rabbit holes on Reddit. I lurked in legal advice, just no family, even malicious compliance, absorbing strangers' war stories like vitamins. One post about photographing prescription bottles for chain of custody spurred me to index every single item in our medicine cabinet, time-stamped, and email the archive to myself. Another thread emphasized documenting emotional damage, so I began a voice diary on my phone. At first it was shaky gulps and half-sentences, eventually whole monologues that later helped my therapist quantify nightmares for the damages report. Community, even virtual, is an antidote to isolation. A retired paralegal from Oregon DM'd templates for evidence logs. A nurse in Ireland explained dilution indicators I could ask the lab to test. A grandmother from Texas reminded me to drink water. These strangers, avatars on screens, formed a digital jury of support long before the courthouse lights snapped on each morning. Their stories, layered with mine, taught me that revenge isn't always flame and ash. Sometimes it's meticulous record-keeping that turns chaos into exhibits. Therapy helped too. My counselor Mara specialized in trauma linked to medical betrayal. She guided me through grounding exercises I could practice while feeding Theo. Rituals like naming 5 kitchen smells or tracing the embroidery on his blanket. During depositions, I carried a smooth stone she'd gifted me. Each time Rachel's lawyer tried to needle me, I pressed it hard until its outline printed into my palm. A silent, concrete mantra. Hold the line. Trial week arrived with humid summer air, that plastered courthouse flags to their poles. Jury selection alone exhausted me more than labor had, but adrenaline kept me vertical. Jason's opening statement painted Rachel as a narcissist so entitled she believed she could rewrite biology to match her baby name fantasies. Her lawyer tried sympathy, calling her a heartbroken woman desperate for family connection. But jurors side-eyed his theatrics. I testified second. The oath felt electric, my right hand tingling like it knew secrets even I hadn't processed. I described the cramps, the fear, the moment I learned about the tampering. I produced the injection journal, every page photocopied. Then came the security video. The grainy footage showed Rachel entering in a hoodie, glancing up at the camera like she was daring it to blink, emerging minutes later with a small white bottle visible in her hand. Jurors leaned forward. One woman whispered, "Wow." Our expert OB explained exactly how ibuprofen injected intramuscularly could cause placental insufficiency, fetal demise, or maternal sepsis. The jury's expressions hardened. Rachel didn't testify this time. Her attorney rested after a perfunctory lineup of character witnesses, former co-workers who admitted under cross that Rachel had been fired for falsifying timesheets. Jason's closing reminded the jury that pregnancy is voluntary vulnerability, a biological gamble society agrees to protect. Rachel Turner didn't just break that pact, he said. She shattered it, then demanded a naming fee. Deliberations ran 2 hours. Verdict: liable on every count. Compensatory damages: $640,000. Punitive damages: $1.2 million. Interest until paid in full. The courtroom buzzed like a beehive kicked at dusk. Rachel sobbed into trembling hands. Her lawyer stared at the ceiling. I sat very still, heart racing slower than I expected, then realized the feeling wasn't joy, but equilibrium, the world tilting back to level. Her lawyer filed notice of appeal so quickly, the clerk joked about speed typing. Jason anticipated it. Appeals are marathon slow. In the meantime, the court placed liens on Rachel's house, car, future tax refunds, and any inheritance she might receive. She moved into a studio above a laundromat. Her boyfriend bailed. Her parents, previously silent, met me for coffee, apologies spilling like water from a busted hydrant. I accepted the condolences, not forgiveness. They weren't the ones who injected my medication. I would love to say that's where the story ends, tidy in the Reddit scroll. But real life drags its feet. Over the next year, Rachel tried everything. GoFundMe pages framing herself as a persecuted aunt, podcast interviews blaming Big Pharma, even a handwritten letter to me offering to drop the appeal if I renamed Theo before his 2nd birthday. I sent the letter straight to Jason, who tacked it onto our motion for sanctions. The appellate judge dismissed her brief for failure to cite relevant precedent and ordered her to pay additional fees. 2 months ago, collection agents sold her SUV at auction. I watched the listing online. 2019 Jeep Cherokee, 42,000 miles, needs detailing. It fetched $8,000 below book value. The proceeds went straight to our trust for Theo's college. When I saw the transfer confirmation, I cried for the first time since the cramps. Not because of the money, but because my son's future had been strengthened by the very hands that once tried to erase it. Rachel will be eligible for parole next year. Jason expects she'll still owe us close to $1 million by then, interest compounded. Wages will be garnished. Any book deal she fantasizes about will route through our lien. She'll feel us in every paycheck stub, every bank statement, every time she thinks about interfering with someone else's choices. That, to me, is justice, not forgiveness, not an olive branch, a permanent legal tattoo of cause and effect. Last week, I sat in Theo's room after bedtime, breathing in the powder and warm milk smell, reflecting on every domino that led here. I wondered if some alternate universe version of me had caved, named him Brandon, smiled for family photos, and carried secret resentment forever. That version would be lauded as peacemaker during holidays, maybe even praised on Facebook for keeping family first. But peace bought with appeasement tastes like stagnant water. I chose the flavor of litigation, bitter at first, ultimately clean. People on Reddit always ask for a TLDQ, so here's mine. If someone tampers with your life to force their fantasy, make sure the consequences outlive their interest. I didn't forgive, and I don't regret it. I sued, I won, and every time my son says "Mama," I remember that a name is only powerful if you protect the person who bears it. I think that's the moral. Names, justice, protection. One syllable for each, simple and immutable like the beat of a child's heart on an ultrasound monitor. My sister-in-law tried to rewrite our story in her own handwriting. I subpoenaed the pen, the paper, and the ink, handed them to a judge, and watched her masterpiece condemned as evidence. Theo will grow up knowing that his name was the first word in a saga about boundaries, consent, and relentless defense. And if someday he asks why Aunt Rachel can't come to Thanksgiving, I'll tell him the truth, unvarnished. Not to scare him, but to teach him that forgiveness is not an obligation. It's an option reserved for those who earn it. She didn't. She won't. And that's okay. Revenge, when measured, legal, and rooted in protection, can be righteous. The world keeps turning, the courthouse doors keep swinging, and my son keeps growing, brand new and unburdened by someone else's unfinished love story. That's the ending. No apologies, no reunions, just the steady hum of accountability, punctuated by my child's laughter at bath time. The rest of our lives are unwritten, but Rachel's chapter is closed, sealed by a judge's stamp, payable in monthly installments until her signature fades under ink that never fully dries.